Hi everyone, Jessica here, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to share with you the cards that I created for Papercraft Essentials issue 225, and it was using their free gift. So I've got 5 cards here that I needed to create, and I was mainly focusing on the patterned papers but bringing in then the other elements of the kit. So before we have a look at the actual cards, this is the paper kit here. It's called a Potting Shed. So this is an 8x8 luxury paper pad. So in here we have 28 foiled die cut toppers, 40 die cut toppers, 64 toppers, 9 patterned papers, 4 journal cards and 2 boot card templates, plus then you get 6 of these wooden sentiment sticks. So along with the patterned papers, then I was to use these sentiment sticks and show you different ways of being able to colour them so they weren't all just in this kind of natural wood colour. So I really enjoyed this. The pattern papers were absolutely beautiful in these. It is making me, because it is currently March, now the beginning of March, when I need to complete this commission. The magazine won't be out until, I believe it's the 11th of May, but it's really sort of getting me into that garden spring vibe. So hopefully you guys will really love this kit as well. So I'll just sort of walk you through the cards. I don't obviously have much of the kit left. I do have some of the patterned papers, a lot of the toppers that I have used. But yeah, I've still got sort of bits and pieces left. But let's start with some of the maybe more simpler cards. So I'm just going to move these to the side. So I did create a DL sized card here using the patterned papers. And again, I really love it. You've got all of the different garden bits and pieces here. You've got the watering can. You've got the aprons, the radio, all the tools and things. I thought it was really, really beautiful. So I tried to kind of pair my mats and layers, my coloured card, with the colours that was obviously in the patterned paper. So I went here for a coral pink colour. I used the filigree DL nesting dies from Creative Craft products. So that's glued to the card base. Then a patterned paper is up on foam. Then I used 2 of the sticks on here. So we've got Send in Love, Special Friend. And these I just glued on. So you can either glue them, or if you want them to be a bit more secure, you could use something like red liner tape. And then I coloured these using some alcohol markers. These were just the Prism alcohol markers, so they don't have to be anything special. And it really does take on that colour. You want to just be careful, especially with alcohol inks, is not to smudge the ink from the actual sentiments on the stick. I added then this topper, so I cut this out of a bigger topper that there was in the kit, and then I added some twine. The twine you can't really see is actually around the whole of the patterned paper. I tied it in a bow, but then I did pop the topper in that on top of it, sorry. And then we've just got a few Nuvo drops up there in the corner. So a really simple card to kind of get started with, really. Then I created this 7x7 inch card, and this was using the patterned papers. This was actually the last card I created, and I really wanted to use all of the papers together just to show you that they all do work together, but also creating then this really fun sort of patchwork background. This is a really great background to create if you've got lots of patterned paper left, and you know you've been snipping into it. Try and find a common size throughout the papers. They don't all have to be the same length, but try to get the width to be the same. But you could do different widths. I did 1 inch widths here because I really wanted you to be able to see the patterns on the paper. If you've got smaller ones, you can of course incorporate those as well, and it'll just give you a different look to the background. Also think about the direction of the paper. So these ones up here, this one here I cut differently to these 2 pieces that you can see here, but this particular paper, all I had was a piece of length left, so it went across. We've got across and then down. So think about what direction your paper's going in, how you can use that creatively to then create different kinds of backgrounds, but creating, you know, them in different directions just creates a more interesting background. Then we've got one of the full toppers here, which I just matte and layered onto some green cardstock. Again, some of those elements, these ones were all pre-die cut for you, so it made it really easy just to pop them out straight on your card. This one here is up on foam. This one was glued. I've then just stuck down the stick again. So this one again was using a different colour of alcohol ink. This one is up on foam as well. I added foam to the back of my background with a piece of pistachio green cardstock and then glued that onto my card base. So with this one, the best way I find to create a background like this is to start off with a piece of paper or cardstock. It doesn't have to be anything too thick, to the size that you want it to be. This is I believe 6 1/4 inches. Then you can just add your strips onto that and then trim away the excess. I find that the easiest way to create a background like this. Then I created a circle easel card. So I'm looking for different ways of using my ink pads as well. So for this one, like I said, this is an easel card if I just turn it to the side. So I created this entire card from scratch. So I used some circle scalloped nesting dies. So I just die cut 3 of them. You can see, if I just turn it, this piece here. So I did a score line 1 inch from the top and then glued that onto the base. Now that would be how I would traditionally create a circle card, just by adding a score line and gluing it to the back. But then I also then came down 3 inches, added a score line there, and then glued that to the front piece. So you can see how this kind of sits. We've got our topper here at the front, and that just allows our easel card to stay upright. So like I said, circle nesting dies, again from Creative Craft products. So we've got then all of these circles, of course, are the same size. We came down 1 size then for the patterned paper for the top, and then for the pink coral cardstock again, that's the same size on there. And then I did just trim the back of this just so it fitted. You could add this piece to the circle first before you assembled your card, but it doesn't really matter too much. Then again, we've got some of the toppers. So this was glued on. We've got the signpost here, Life is Better in the Garden, which is on with some foam. And then again, the same thing with the sentiment stick is on with foam again, just for a little bit of dimension. So this one here, I used 2 colours of Distress ink. So I used Worn Lipstick and Picked Raspberry, just for a slight variation in colour. But also notice, I'm not sure if you can kind of pick it up, with these sticks that I used on these 2 cards, I really saturated the wood. So then it was more a saturation of colour. You can see a little bit of the wood texture in these, but not too much. I really did kind of cover all of it. But this one, because I just swiped the ink pad across it, I wanted to try and leave some lighter areas and where you could really see that wood grain, because I think it just adds a nice effect where you can still kind of see that it is, you know, a wooden stick. We also added then a little twine bow, and again then we've got a topper which is up on foam to be our stopper for our easel card. We've got another little sentiment foiled sentiment here. We've got the Nuvo drops again, and then yeah, I just took the Picked Raspberry and just swiped it around the edge of the card. So I think it actually looks really nice. With the fact that the stick isn't completely saturated in colour, you can still see small amounts of that wood colour shining through, and it is kind of a garden theme as well. So I really liked how this came out. Again, it's all slightly different around the edges, but it just gave it a slightly more rustic look, which I'm really happy with. Maybe something that I could have kind of added to it, maybe instead of doing you know, like a scalloped edge, I could have done a regular circle and maybe torn the edges of it or distressed the edges. Maybe that would give it a little bit more of an outdoor kind of rustic look. But yeah, I think it's just nice to find another way of actually using your ink pads. So yeah, a really quite easy card to put together, but it does look really nice and effective. One of the other things you do get in the kit is a template. So I will show you the second template. There are 2 in here. The first one I did trim apart, of course, to create my template for this card here. Let me just get it out of the packaging. So you have this piece here. You've got an example of what they can look like, and you have some buckles on here as well. So this is this boot here. Now what I ended up doing is cutting this down in stages to create all the different kinds of elements for this card. So to begin with, I simply just trimmed around the outer white border, and that was then going to be used for my card base. So what I did was basically, once I cut it out, I traced 2 of them onto some white cardstock. I added a score line on the back of one and just glued it to the other. So we created a shaped card base. So that's pretty much, if I'm creating a shaped card base, typically it's a circle one that I create myself, but if I'm doing any sort of shape, that is how I create my cards. On one, I add a small score line at the top, glue it to the other, so we have the full shape, and then we have our card base. Then after that, what I did was I then trimmed it down and cut along the black line, which then gave me the inner piece. So it allowed me to have the card base and then almost a mat and layer to go onto it. So I cut that out of some green cardstock. So not only do you get the patterned paper, if I show you on this card, you do also get some really nice other colours, some sort of watercolour effect ones. You have this really nice brown one as well with a little bit of texture in that. You have green and then kind of that turquoise as well. So you get a nice variety of papers. So then you can see here that this is almost, but not quite. So this is where I cut around that black edge, and then I cut that, traced it, and then cut that from the green cardstock. Then after that, so with this particular boot, we had the piece at the bottom, and then we also had this lip at the top. So for example, on this one, what I did then was simply just to cut off this bottom portion, and then I use that as a template as well. So for example, on here, so I cut the bottom piece off and the top piece, cut that then from some of the browner cardstock, and then just put that on top. So you can use these templates to really kind of build up and make a more interesting boot. If you want to be able to use this template not just once, because obviously you can see that I've cut this down and now all I've got is this piece here in the middle, so I wouldn't be able to create the actual card base again. But if you want to do that, what I'd recommend doing is still cutting it up in stages like I've done, but then trace it onto maybe a piece of grey board, onto a piece of thicker cardstock, and then you can keep that template. So you would have then all the different pieces to put that boot back together. So with this boot, for example, this welly, if I was to make a template that I wanted to keep, then I would cut around again that white outer edge. I would then trace that onto a piece of card. That's my first template. I would then cut this down again for the black outline. Again, I would trace that onto another piece of cardstock. There's my second template. And then I would just trim off this bottom piece here, and then again do the same thing. And then I've basically got 3 different templates which would create this particular boot. What you also have then is the buckles on here as well. So I wasn't going to create a template for these, though you could. So I literally just cut out one of the brown ones and then just glued that on. So then when I came and assembled this together, so of course we have our shaped card base, we have our green full layer, so that's the full piece. Then we've got our brown bottom and top piece, that's glued on top. And then we've got our buckle, which is going to create a really great boot or welly, as you can see here. Then what I did was took one of the foiled toppers here, that's on a bit of foam, and then I cut out just a couple of elements from the kit as well. The flower and the pot is glued, these 2 here are on foam, and then I just added a sentiment as well, and that's on with a little bit of foam as well. And then when you stand it up, it kind of stands obviously more at this end. So maybe when you're putting your sentiments toppers on so they read straight, is to put your card upright and then kind of add your sentiments on top. But really, really easy to create a template like this and then be able to create the card base and then the patterned paper on top. So I had a lot of fun creating this one here. I like to create something a little bit different. It just makes creating projects a little bit more fun, because you have to create with a little bit of variety. And then we've got this big card here. This is the last card that I created, and I wanted to really create something fun. I wanted to use a lot of the elements. So all of these elements you can see in here, they were all pre-die cut. They're in still in the card, but just with a little tab, and you had absolutely tons of them. And I really wanted to use them. Hopefully they like the cards that I have created. And again, trying to focus mainly on that patterned paper. So like here, this one was focusing on the plainer patterned paper. We've got the scraps of patterned paper, and then just kind of using them for these cards. But with this, so we do still have the patterned paper. So we can see here, we've got it on the front and then on the side pieces as well. But again, I kind of wanted to use these elements. I wanted to create a slightly more complicated project. It's not impossible to create. They're very easy to create, these kind of tunnel cards, and I think they're really effective when you have a lot of elements like this. You've got so many icons here and pictures for the garden. I thought we would create a tunnel card and try and just get as many in here as possible. So there are loads and loads of tutorials on YouTube. If you want to see a tutorial on how to create one of these, then leave me a comment down below and I will create them. I always struggle a little bit. So if we look down here, I always struggle with at least one of these not sitting straight. These back two here are sitting relatively straight, but this one isn't. It's curved forward. And I don't know why. Again, if you've got any suggestions, maybe if something, whether this piece needs to be, I don't know, slightly smaller, I'm not sure. I did follow a tutorial on here, but yeah, I never know why it does that. So I wanted to create a slightly bigger card and more of a rectangle as well. So again, I could get as many pieces in here as possible. So we have the front piece, we have the 3 inserts and the back piece, which I did also use as an insert as well. So you can see it down there. So to begin with, so starting just at the back. So when I lifted that open, then you can kind of see what we've got back there. So we have a piece of the patterned paper, which you can see back there when you look through. Because it was textured, again, it was some of the patterned paper in the kit. I wanted it to look like a sky, and we added the shed, the fence, and the sign back there as well. And then for the 3 main inserts here, I used as the aperture the inverted scallop rectangles. So I used the largest for the front piece here, and then I went down 2 sizes for the first insert and then 1 size after that, because I wasn't too worried about getting that tunnel effect necessarily. It was more about just having the layers of the garden, so we could have bigger pictures at the front and then smaller ones at the back, like the shed. So I cut out the inverted scallop, and with the inverted scallop, it's going to leave the scallop in there, which I thought was just a nice sort of added design bonus in here. What I did for all 3 of the inserts is I did ink blend them. So we've got some Distress Ink Mowed Lawn at the bottom and then some Tumble Glass at the top for the sky. Again, I really wanted to create that kind of garden scene, so I want the grass and the sky. What I would recommend is, because you can see all the way down, so with the back, for example, I didn't necessarily want to use an entire piece of cardstock, the patterned paper back there. I could have used plain, but again, I needed to use the patterned paper. So I did just do a small rectangle like you can see there, and it was enough just where you wouldn't see it when you look down the card. But what I would recommend is, because you can look down the card and see it, is to kind of not neglect what can't be seen through the tunnel. So I have ink blended all the way to the edges, so the entire pieces of these inserts, just so when you look down it, it's much more neat and tidy. So on the next row, we have got a wheelbarrow. We've got down here, we've got the fork and the spade. We've got a plant pot there. We've got a couple of flowers just up here. We've got the radish. We've got the carrot. In the next layer, we've got lots of pots. We've got wellies. We've got a ladder here with the apron hung on it. We've got this lovely little leaf here, which I was going to put down the ladder, but I didn't want to hide too much of that. We've got the bird houses, we've got the garden sign, we've got a butterfly, we've got a crate with the flowers, which come separately. You can put those together. We've got the smaller tools, and then I really like that it's got the table and chairs, and then I popped the radio on top of that. So it just built up a really fun scene. It's got lots of sentiments actually in the pack, sorry. So I just trimmed this one out. I did a little fishtail on the ends, like a banner, and then I just gave it a little bit of curve as well. And then for the stick on here, so we've got on your retirement, so with love on your retirement. I thought this would make a perfect retirement card, and you do have space where you could write your message on the back, or of course on a separate piece, and then just glue it to that back piece. With this one, I used a spray. So this is the Prism Glimmer Mist Sprays. It's got a little bit of glitter in here, of course with the glimmer, and then I used, I want to say it was baby powder. So this didn't sink in quite as quickly. It did sit on the surface, so you do need to wait. but it's got a lovely sparkly finish, which I'm not sure really if the camera will pick up or not, but yeah, it just adds something a little sparkly and something a little nice to it. I do wish now that I'd picked this particular sentiment in this colour, I wish that I had gone for maybe a pink instead of the blue, just to help that stand out with the sentiment. And again, this has left a lot of the texture, even though you've got the colour in there, it has left a lot of the texture still exposed from that wood, and then also it's not completely saturated in colour. It does have some of that wood colour coming through, which again I do really love, because it is that garden themed. You know, you want it to be sort of I wanted it to be kind of more in keeping with that. So I'm really chuffed with how this one turned out. It's always nice to create a project and then have lots of things to be able to fill it up with. So those were my cards for the commission using this kit. So of course there's going to be lots of ideas within the kit itself of what you can create using this particular kit. Like I said, my main kind of focus for this was the patterned papers and was using the boot template as well. But yeah, I did have a lot of fun creating this, and again, like I said, it's still cold at the minute because it is still March, but it's really kind of got me in the mood to get out into the garden. So like I said, the magazine will already be out by the time this video has gone up. Like I said, I'm just showing you these cards before I do send them off to the magazine to be photographed and all that good stuff. So I might not end up playing with the kit again, because I don't have tons of it left. But yeah, I do hope that you like these samples. Like I said, if you want to see a tutorial on how to create the tunnel card, then please let me know. But that's going to be it for this video. So thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.